Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sponsorship Podcast. You have me, Jess Shanahan, and you've got Toby Trice here with you today. We're going to be talking about features versus benefits and what the differences are and how you can use them in your pitches and when you're talking to sponsors. But before we go into that, I want to let you know about two special webinars that I'm running. The first is all about building relationships with sponsors, because that's one of the most vital parts of the pitch process. But in the second one, we are also going to look at the anatomy of a winning pitch. So I'm literally going to go through line by line pitches that I've sent and that others have sent to see what works. So you can kind of learn more about how you can write an email and use proposals to pitch to a sponsor and get a reply and hopefully get that sponsorship money as well.
Hey everyone, and thanks again for tuning in. Jess, that sounds super excited. I'm really excited to hear about your webinars, particularly the second one about the pitch emails and writing to sponsors to kind of get them deals secured. I know in the past we've kind of forwarded and switched different emails and different pitches that I've sent out, and it's been really, really great to sort of get your feedback on them, and it's allowed me to elevate kind of my sponsorship pitches to different clients, and it's allowed me to gain sponsorship. So for those that are listening, I would really recommend sign up to Jess's webinar, because already I've received so much value just off the back of looking at my pitch emails, and I'm not the best writer. I'm great at talking, but I'm not the best writer. So it's been really helpful having Jess on board to look through those and just help rewrite kind of my emails to sponsors, and it's allowed me to get good business. And so Jess, thank you for sharing with us what you're up to in the next few weeks, I guess, is it?
Yeah, so the first one will take place on Tuesday, 7th of July, and then the second one will follow a week later on the 14th. And I'm really excited to teach those, because I think I've learned a lot about pitching just from, working in sponsorship and doing it myself, but then also working with drivers and, tweaking their pitches. I've seen so many good and bad ones over the years, and I've seen which ones bring in results. So I'm super excited to talk about that. But today's podcast is about features versus benefits. So, Toby, if I could ask you to share to begin with, like, what the difference is between the two.
Yeah, that's fine. I think, understanding the difference between features and benefits is super, super important. A lot of us know as drivers what features are. So features are things like hospitality, sticker on a race car, those kind of like actual tactile things. But it's really, really important to understand what benefits mean. And in sponsorship terms, it's taking those elements of sponsorship and understanding actually how it benefits a sponsor. So for example, hospitality being the feature, but what benefit is that to a sponsor? And that's where the benefits lie. So the benefit there would be the fact that they could entertain their loyal clients to then reward and maintain the sort of business sales and increase in terms of loyalty. I think, Jess, that's kind of just a brief kind of description of what a key feature is and a benefit is. I know we may have been more specific, but yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I've gone up and down over the years of like how I explain this to people, because some people just get it straight away, but for others, kind of understanding the difference might be quite tough. So typically what I say is, the feature is kind of like the surface statement about what you offer. So literally the thing, like you say, hospitality. But the benefit is the impact that has on the sponsor.
Yeah.
And obviously hospitality is a great example because it can have so many different benefits. So like one feature won't always have the same benefit for every single person that you speak to. And actually, even for one sponsor, that one thing like hospitality might have a ton of benefits from, engaging customers, engaging staff, networking, all of those kinds of things. And it's a really, really important distinction to make early on, because then when you pitch, you're not just writing down a list of stuff that you can offer, you're showing a business exactly how it can impact them and how it can make them money.
Exactly. And this ties in really nicely with a previous episode about understanding your sponsors and getting to know them. Because if you don't understand what you can do for a sponsor in terms of what are their goals, then how can you put what features you've got available to then benefit that business? Don't you think, Jess?
Yeah, you need to make it relevant. So I think that, if you go to a business, especially if they haven't had any dealings in motorsport and they don't really understand it, you need to spell it out for them. So like a business might not understand that hospitality is great for networking, or they might not understand that it's great for, customer engagement or employee engagement. So by spelling it out in that way, based on, your research and knowing what they're trying to do, they're going to be more compelled by your pitch, whether you're sending a message on LinkedIn or whether you're actually having like a formal pitch meeting. Being able to spell out those benefits is so important.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you just go to a sponsor, hey, I'm a racing driver and I can give you hospitality tickets at Brands Hatch, most people just go, oh, great, thanks. That's awesome. And some people that may have used hospitality before may go, oh, that's really cool. I've been there. But actually, if you then look at solving a problem to that sponsor, that's a far better way of actually explaining how it works for them. So if you understand that perhaps one of their goals is to reward their staff for their hard work during this pandemic, because obviously it's been a really, really tricky time, you can then look at a particular benefit for that hospitality. For example, if you was to say to that client, once the lockdown's over, we can take a group of your team to Brands Hatch and give them a lovely day out with some champagne and some nice food and really reward your staff and make them feel valued. You've then told them the benefit of that feature. And that's way more compelling than just saying, hey, I've got some hospitality tickets for you. And it's really, really important that you understand those goals and those benefits and how you can kind of tie the two together.
Yeah, exactly. And actually using that same analogy. So if you go to a business and say hospitality tickets, you can have 5 of them. That might only translate to £500 worth of value when you actually look at it, on paper, maybe up to 1,000, depending on the kind of hospitality that you're offering. But when you say to a business that this kind of employee engagement and treating your employees in this way and giving them these thank yous could be the difference between retaining your talent or having to look for a new member of staff. And recruiting staff is so expensive. So suddenly you've got this value that's probably in the tens of thousands because you're not having to spend money on recruitment agencies and ads and all that kind of stuff because you're treating your staff well and they know that they should stay with you.
Yeah, and I think, just on that topic, maybe kind of like a bit of a side note here is that for most companies, staff retention is actually a really, really key priority because, like you say, Jess, hiring out and kind of finding new staff is very expensive. And I think a lot of staff feel really valued within a company if they get reward from from their employer, and that's that point is really proven at what Jess just said. It saves the company money in terms of recruitment, but also it makes their staff happier and more engaged, and therefore can be more productive. Especially if you've got a sort of sales-led sort of team, if you like, and if one of your sponsors are kind of sales focused in field marketing or something like that, then you can really reward those staff and they can get some genuine results in business, and that's further growth on top of it, and it elevates that kind of what would be £1,000 for some for a box to being worthwhile and more valuable to them.
Yeah, and I think it's really easy then to measure return on investment because what you want is at the end of, a year or so for you to go back to your sponsor and be like, right, did your sales staff make more sales than the last year? Or did you have to recruit less than the last year? Because then the sponsor can go, well, actually, yeah, we made this many more sales, or we did this. And you can kind of then start to see the return on investment of sponsorship. But that only works if when you pitch, you go in with these benefits.
Yeah, and it makes you look like you know what you're talking about, because rather than again just talking about the feature, it shows you've got actual genuine business acumen and understand how that can actually benefit a sponsor, and it makes you look really serious. And I'm sure you agree, Jess, is that by having that understanding and taking that to a company and demonstrating that value, delivering it, and then at the end of the season actually reviewing it and showing what value you gain from it, you're more likely then to keep that sponsor.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've obviously talked a bit about hospitality here, but should we talk about kind of the different features that most drivers are likely to offer and how you can kind of translate those features into benefits?
Yeah, let's do that, Jess. There's so many as racing drivers, isn't there? There's loads of features that you've got at your hand, and I think this is why sponsorship really separates you from sort of normal marketing campaigns is we've got so many tools to us. So yeah, let's go through some.
Yeah, so let's start with kind of the basic ones, the ones that are inside the box. So obviously we've touched on hospitality. So we've talked about, treating your VIP customers, looking after your staff, the networking element. I think with some businesses as well, like if they have product-based businesses, there could be kind of like a sales or product marketing kind of element to hospitality as well.
Yeah.
I had a sponsor for some hospitality that we did at Silverstone, and we put goodie bags on every table. So they were walking away with kind of all this great stuff from this brand. So people are going home with like hats and bottles, as well as like, examples of the product. So I think there's that element as well. So it's kind of brand awareness, but the kind of brand awareness that should lead to sales, as opposed to the brand awareness that everyone touts when talking about stickers on a race car. So I kind of want to look at branding on the race car, because I think drivers often put too much weight on this as like a really, really kind of good element of what it could be. But I do think there are some benefits, but they shouldn't kind of be used on their own.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. You can't just rely as a branded sticker on a race car. You can't rely on that at all. So there's so much that you can do with a race car, but
Yeah.
you've got to look at what benefit is there to a company in terms of the brand awareness. And for most businesses, brand awareness is really, really key. So if you can understand some of these benefits, then that is absolutely fantastic to offer to your sponsors.
So I don't know whether this comes from, my bias as a content creator who's putting out loads of social content, but a lot of brands struggle to get social media content out there and blog content. And there is nothing more just cool and powerful than a branded race car.
100%.
And it is like just a really nice perk, especially for smaller businesses, to see their brand on a race car. So it's just cool. And obviously that's really hard to quantify in a pitch, but I always go in saying that it's easy content. Like the end of every race weekend, we'll send you X amount of images for you to use across social media to engage with your audience, to start conversations, all of that kind of thing. Because even if a business has a social media department, it might be that those social media assistants are struggling for content that's engaging.
Exactly, Jess, because those benefits that you just explained there are spot on. I've spoke to a lot of businesses in the last few months, and their challenge is exactly that. How can we create content when we've just got a team of people in an office, and what do we do about that? But when you can give them tools to have content available for them so easily, then yeah, how cool does a branded race car look? It looks great for your title sponsor to have kind of a really plush looking race car with all their brands down the side. So the feature of the sticker on the car there is really simple, but Jess just explains some amazing benefits and ways that you can directly benefit the sponsor.
And I think another thing that people kind of need to think about is, like, when it comes to actually doing the work, you need to make it as easy as possible. So like there are, drivers out there who don't send images, don't send video content, don't send race reports, which means that if the business actually wants to benefit from those things, they have to chase, which they probably won't because they're busy, which means down the line when you come to renew, they'll be like, yeah, but we didn't actually do anything. We didn't get any of the benefits of all this content because we never actually got any. So I always just kind of set up a Dropbox link and send it to a sponsor with a brief race report usually. So then it's easy for them just to lift the images they want. But some drivers might take that a step further. They might deliver, Instagram ready square video. They might actually really think about how they can make it as easy as possible based on what they know about the business. And it's not too difficult to mock up those kinds of things. And I think if you are going to go with that really visual content-led angle, it's good to kind of show what you can do, whether you're using Canva, like we mentioned in the first episode, or whether you're using a designer or have design skills yourself. I think showcasing what you can do and how easy you can make it for a business will show those benefits even further.
Yeah, again, it just elevates that whole feature of a stick on a race car, doesn't it, Jess? You've completely transformed what that feature is then, and you've listed so many benefits. And it kind of brings us nicely onto things like social media mentions. We're all quite happy and we all understand the social media world, and tagging your sponsors on the pictures, making mentions and creating posts, and they're really cool features. but understanding actually how that benefits your sponsors is really, really important also. So Jess, can you talk a little bit about social media mentions and how that is a benefit?
Yeah, so I think just on its own is probably not a benefit, because there's certain stuff that the business needs to do to make it work. And this is where that whole sponsorship activation thing comes in, that a lot of businesses actually don't understand. And we could probably set up a whole podcast about sponsorship activation.
Absolutely.
But I think the key is it's getting their audience and your audience involved with the brand. It's about kind of creating this sense of belonging that, you know, their audience can get behind you as a racing driver. So it's not just about mentioning them so your audience can find them, which, you know, that might work. It might be that if they have like a really easily accessible product that's like food or drink, or maybe a low price clothing product, it might be actually quite easy to sell in that way. But the big benefits of kind of social media come from things like doing Instagram lives where you get questions, and doing that kind of on the businesses, but whether it's Facebook page or Instagram, wherever you like to do your lives. I think doing things like that is going to have so much more power, because you directly need to get your audience and their audience involved and engaging actively with that brand for any of this kind of stuff to work.
Yeah, and it kind of like falls, like you said, into the kind of the social and following thing, with regards to if their audience then gets engaged with, you know, following the racing driver's journey, they then are really on board with the brand that is also supporting them. So it makes it kind of, the content that you're creating off the back of that becomes really rich and engaging. Particularly when you see a lot of sort of posts that just flop. You know, when you post something on Instagram or a live feed and you don't get much audience, it's then hard to then understand your, you know, what your audience want. But when you do posts like Jess just explained, they usually bring really, really rich and engaged audiences with high view numbers. And if the brand are operating that on their channels, then that's only more beneficial for their sort of algorithm, if you like, in social media. And then more posts will be seen by that particular company. So the benefit then is to the company is that they're getting more reach, more impressions, more engagement with their business, which will allow them then to make more sales, because of they've got, you know, better sort of brand awareness with their audience.
Yeah, and one stat that I really like that's, you know, very businessy, is that it takes 5 to 7 touch points for a business to make a sale. So your customer has to see from you, you know, some social content. They need to hear something about you. They need to see an ad. They need to do all of these things before they'll even consider making like a purchase. So if a brand is working with a racing driver, and that racing driver is posting about that brand, getting people involved, that's all those touch points kind of covered. So, I mean, that's a great stat to kind of quote when you're talking about, hey, I could do social media, and then there's press coverage and all these other things. Like, there are your 5 touch points right there.
Yeah.
So I think really thinking about how people buy, and certainly how they buy from the specific business that you're pitching to, and this is why research is really important. Think about how people buy and try and work out how you as a racing driver can funnel people towards that buying decision. It should then be quite easy to explain the benefits of whatever it is you're offering to that business.
Exactly. I mean, it's hard to measure the exact success of that, because obviously over those touch points, you may be involved in more or less than others. But yeah, for businesses themselves, I had that fact recently, Jess, actually, about the touch points, and it's really, really true. I mean, just as a consumer myself on a certain product that I just recently bought, I did some research, I saw some press, looked at social media, and there probably was about 5 or 6 times that I was kind of looking at that particular product before I actually clicked the purchase. And it wasn't anything particularly expensive. It was actually about £20 worth of item, but I still kind of made that journey of all those touch points, and every little element kind of added towards encouraging me to buy. And as a racing driver, if you can kind of help influence the customer's journey to be more positive towards the brand, then the business is only going to benefit off the back of that.
Yeah, and I actually have a nice example of this as well, because in our Podium Club kind of like group coaching sessions, you, me,
Love,
and Nathan,
love Podium Club.
me too, we've obviously been talking about fitness a lot, because it's, you know, it's the perfect kind of time for racing drivers to be focusing on their fitness, but you guys have inspired me to do more rather than just sitting at home on my computer. And we've been talking about resistance bands and like easy ways to do fitness stuff at home when there's no access to a gym. And I've like looked at your recommendations for these resistance bands, and I've looked, and they're now popping up on like my Amazon ads because I've looked a couple of times, but I still haven't bought anything because there's only been actually about 3 touch points, even though I know I'm going to buy. I just haven't made the actual buying decision yet. And this is a whole kind of other rabbit hole that I could go down into of, the different stages of customer awareness and the buying journey. They do vary for every business, but typically, it'll start with the buyer kind of being aware of a business, then kind of considering their product, and then kind of going to that decision phase where they're trying to work out how they're going to buy, what they're going to buy, all that kind of thing. And racing drivers can actually play like a really strong part in that. And I know that's kind of slightly off topic from the benefits, but I think it's important that racing drivers understand that customer journey, because then when you're doing your research, you can kind of see that, this business has Facebook ads that I'm now being served because I went to their website. Well, that's part of the buyer journey of like delivering those touch points. So as a racing driver, you can say, and then how about there's, a video here with a race car, or, we then do an Instagram live. It's just always kind of adding to those things that a business is already doing to make it more successful.
Yeah, and the more understanding you've got of that, as a driver, you're really setting yourself up for success because A, you understand the business because you've done your research. B, you understand what features you've got and exactly how they benefit those sponsors and understand their problems and how to solve them. And time and time again, you'll just get great success. And ultimately, you want to benefit that sponsor because at the end of the day, it's a two-way street. I think in partnerships, if they receive their kind of from their investment, they get a return on it because of your expertise, what you've worked towards, and because you understand that journey, they're going to come back next season, because their investment has been well outweighed with what they've returned.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other feature that I kind of want to touch on, just because I think it's a good thing for drivers to offer that's actually quite easy, is having a race car to showcase at like trade events.
Definitely.
I think this is a really important one because there's so many benefits, and also the ROI is quite clear as well. So like it's really easy for businesses to measure like how much better their fancy stand at a trade show has done with a race car there.
Yeah, I think like just going to trade shows, I did a bit of research, obviously going to a trade show and kind of looking around and what attracts me to a particular stand. When you've got generic trade shows, they can be quite dull and not inspiring to go to a business. But if that business is using a race car to attract a certain kind of client, then you then can look at generating, collecting emails. You could do competitions, prizes, but having the race car there can be a really, really cool feature. I mean, if you're a racing fan, the product might not necessarily be geared towards motorsport people, but if they're then attracting people to talk as a icebreaker, if you like, with the car there, that's all branded in the company's livery, then it's a really cool feature to have at the event. But the benefit to the sponsor is that the fact that they're then getting more engaged conversations because more people go into the stand, they can collect more emails and more contacts so that they can then future-proof their own campaigns through the digital world, so online email marketing, for example. And it's all just been because of the race cars that are there. So simple, but there's so many benefits to that company.
Yeah, and I know with like events like Autosport, which is kind of the obvious one that most people will be thinking about. With events like that, obviously a race car is important because it's a very, motorsport heavy event, and there's lots of fans there. But this actually also works for even like the most boring of trade shows.
Definitely.
So I've been to loads. When I used to work in fashion, I used to go to loads of like trade shows where it was just, retailers and wholesalers selling off, what they did and showcasing new lines and all of that kind of stuff. But even an industry like that, if you're going to like a menswear trade show, and there are all of these buyers out there who are looking for the next line of clothing to stock, which is typically how menswear fashion designers will make their money. If there's a race car on that stand, it's automatically going to draw people over, which gets them closer to your products, which creates a talking point. And it works in any industry, whether it's engineering, fashion. I don't know what other trade shows there are. Are there like rail industry trade shows?
There are, yeah, there are.
Yeah,
You don't forget there's like model world type trade shows. I mean,
exactly.
there's, to be fair, there's trade shows now for almost every industry. One of the ones that I'm looking to attend later in the year is to go to a fertility show where people can go and look at all the different clinics around the country and find out about IVF treatment, for example. But
Mm.
I'm using a race car to bring guys to my stand, and our sponsor stand, so that we can start talking about support groups and stuff like that. And it's kind of, there's so much you can do. There's so many different places you can go. And I think you mentioned Autosport, Jess. I actually wasn't thinking anything about Autosport when I was looking at the trade show sort of benefit, because the ones that are quite dull and boring, having a race car at those ones are going to make the biggest impact. Whereas if you have a race car at a racing type trade show, it's not necessarily going to have the same impact. So think about the sponsors that you've got on board at the moment and what trade shows they might be involved with. And if there's no race car there, then it's going to be a huge talking point. It's going to attract so many people because naturally it's a cool thing to have on the stand.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't even have to be trade shows where you can get this similar kind of benefit. Like, I know so many drivers that I've worked with have found success working with dealerships that sell similar cars to their race car. So looking at like the Mini Challenge, Mini dealerships and BMW dealerships love having race cars on their forecourts for like VIP events, because it makes them stand out and it gets people to those events, which means their sales staff can then do their job.
Yeah, which is really cool. And another one I think as well is, like, most people realize, walking through high streets and shopping centers, you tend to find kind of salesy people trying to sell you, I don't know, like a new energy company, or they've got some service that's brand new, and obviously they're trying to attract you to sell to you as a customer walking past. And quite often, I know I do, Jess, I don't know about you, but I actually just go, oh no, I'm busy, I'll just walk in, I'll come back later. And they might actually have something really, really beneficial for me. They might have something that could literally transform my life. It could be a really great product that I need, but 9 times out of 10, I'll just walk past and go, oh no, not really interested. But sometimes even having a race car in a shopping centre can really attract a crowd. And then you can get yourself then in front of more and more businesses and more people